Hello, welcome to the 29th Export Talks hosted by Hub Brussels. Today's topic is taxation of e-commerce, how to be compliant with VAT and excise duty. We will listen to two speakers from R&B company, the CEO Michael Boulanger and the business analyst Frédéric Bonnet. I remind you that during the presentation, the audience microphone and cameras are switched off, but we invite you to ask your question in the chat room. So on the right of your screen, you have a little chat box. So don't hesitate to ask all your questions, and we will do a quick answer question at the end of the presentation. And so first of all, we will ask you some question. We will do 5 quick polls so you can answer to your screen. The first question is, it will appear, do you plan to export products in France? So you can click on your screen, yes, no, or I already do it. I let a few seconds to let you vote. Okay. So the results are 50-50. So you plan to export, yes, and 50%. I already with really good. So the next question is now. Do you plan to export products subject to excise duties in France? As we have a lot of exporters already among you, do you plan to export products subject to excise duties? Yes, no, or I already do it. I let you a few seconds to answer. All right. I think everyone has voted no. Okay. I show the results. So 50% says yes and 50% say no to plan to export subjects to excise duties. Next question. So what is your type of customers? It appears. So what is your type of customers? B2C, are you doing B2C, so business to client, or are you doing B2B, so business to business? Again, I'll let you a few seconds to answer on your screen. Okay, I show the results. Again, almost 50-50, so 43% are doing business to customer and 57% are doing business to business. Thank you for your participation. And the last question before starting the presentation, how would you qualify your level of knowledge on excise duties? So you can choose, are you your qualification, do you think you are very good, bad, or really bad? So we have an idea. I see people are still voting. Okay, I will close. Everyone has voted. And I show the results. So 30% think they are good, and 63% think they are really bad, are bad, and 25% really bad. All right, thank you for your participation. And now I will let Michael and Frédéric speak and doing their presentation. And again, don't be afraid to ask all your questions in the chat. I will ask them at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eileen, for this introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar dedicated to a distance selling of alcoholic beverages from Belgium to France or from Belgium to any other EU member state. We're very happy to be here today with you. We will be two speakers today, myself and Frédéric, Fred, for those who know him very well. We, as a company, we are based in the very north of France, along the Belgian border. Fred and myself are Belgian, by the way. And we also have a company in Belgium who provides exactly the same kind of activities. Here are some figures about our company. So we are roughly 30 people, and we are very, very happy to serve around 600 clients that are based in 45 different countries. Next slide, Fred, please. And our mission is to offer fiscal representation services in all EU member states. And when we talk about fiscal representation, we mainly talk about VAT. I think your slides are living their own lives, Fred. So the VAT registration and filing is definitely our main activity, especially since the 1st of January, as we have many more UK friends since that time. But we also, of course, provide fiscal representation for excise duties purposes in France and in some other EU countries. So our clients, some of our clients are selling alcoholic beverages from Belgium, but also from other countries, and they're trying to sell their goods to private individuals in some other countries on a B2B, on a B2C basis, but also on a B2B basis. We provide overall VAT consultancy in the EU and also dedicated Brexit services. For some clients, we also act as an economic operator for the products that need to be EC marked, and this is a very separate activity. Next slide, please. So this is what we have on the agenda today. So we will be talking about what is the excise duties. We will also provide you some practical information about how to sell alcoholic beverages to private individuals. So we will be talking about distance selling to private individuals, but we will also cover the B2B side of this activity with practical schemes, and I hope that we won't be too much technical today. So our mission will be to bring your knowledge a little bit upper than what it is now, and I'm sure you're all underestimating yourself by saying that your knowledge is very bad. But in case this would be too technical, too complicated, please raise your questions in the chat, and we will be more than happy to answer them, Fred and I. So as an introduction, we would just like to remind you that excise duties are taxes. This is not a big surprise for you. A tax is a compulsory payment that needs to be made to public administrations. And taxes are used to finance public expenditure, and they are of course a great means of regulation of the economic activities. but the excise duties need to be considered as taxes among other taxes or among other taxes. And it needs to be paid directly to the local government, whether it is in Belgium or in France. And the main principle of the excise duties is that they need to be paid in the country of consumption. But we will be talking about this a little bit later on. The other specific thing about the excise duties is that they are indirect taxes. So you may know that we have in Belgium and in all the EU countries direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes, if you're paying your corporate tax, for example, you're paying direct taxes. Your personal income taxes, this is a direct tax. The legal debtor is the real debtor. That means that as a taxpayer, you pay this tax directly and only you to the government. The indirect taxes are a little bit different because these taxes are passed on from a taxpayer to another taxpayer, and VAT is probably the best example about what an indirect tax is, as VAT is charged from a taxpayer to another taxpayer, and the second taxpayer has the possibility to reclaim this tax and to recharge it to the third taxpayer, and so on until the real debtor of this tax is charged. And the real and actual debtor is always private individuals. You, Fred, and I, for example, we are paying VAT on products that we buy on a daily basis, and we are the real taxpayers, even if this tax has been paid from a taxpayer to another taxpayer. With the excise duties, things are pretty much the same, as the excise can be either suspended or charged and recharged on the different taxpayers until you and I are buying a bottle of wine, for example, and that includes the prices, the VAT, but also the excise, and the excise is always paid by the end client in the country of consumption. A lot of indirect taxes are calculated on the value of the products, and that's the case about VAT and some other specific taxes. You know that VAT is most of the time 21% in Belgium, 20% in France, and it's very easy to calculate the amount of VAT, as you just have to apply a percentage on the value of the products. With the indirect taxes, things are a little bit more complicated because you need to know what is the rate, or not the rate, but the amount of tax that you will need to calculate per unit of quantity. And a perfect example of this is the excise duties, as they are calculated according to the quantity of alcohol that is contained in the product. They are calculated according to the nature of the product, but also on the quantity of the products. So for certain products, calculating the excise duties is not easy at all. And Fred will be telling you about the main excise rates that are applicable in France.
Thank you, Michael.
Floor is yours, Fred.
Yes, just now that we know what excise duties actually are, there are taxes, indirect taxes, calculated on the quantity. Let's see what kind of products are actually subject to excise duties. You have European regulation on certain products, mainly on energy products like gas, electricity, fuel. You have excise duties also on manufactured tobacco, cigarettes, and tobacco in bulk, and also on alcohol and alcoholic beverages. On these three categories of products, you have EU regulations, and all countries in Europe are subject to excise duties for this kind of products. Specifically for certain countries, there are other excise duties that have been nationally legiferated. So you have other excise duties in certain countries. Like in Belgium, you have excise duties on certain non-alcoholic beverages, like on water, for example. And you have also excise duties on coffee, tea, and so on. In France, you don't have excise duties on water, for example, but you have excise duties on other things. And specifically, in France, mainly, they are called eco-taxes. They are similar to excise duties. They follow the same rules, but as far as beverage sector is concerned, you don't have extra excise duties. Now, what is also important to know that when we talk about excises, we have rates on the products, on the value, on the quantity, but we also have attached additional taxes that are assimilated to the excise duties, and they are collected at the same time. Now, again, it's all different in all countries. For example, in Belgium, when you pay your excise duties on the products, you also have to pay at the same time a certain amount for packaging contribution. Packaging are different depending on they are recyclable or not. The rates are different. In France, you don't have this packaging contribution, but they've also been very interested in attached taxes, and they have created an extra tax that is called social security contribution. We'll see the rates just afterwards, and also a new tax since a few years called the premix tax. I will talk about that just after. As far as the rates are concerned in France, so again, excise duties are legiferated on a European basis, but also on a national basis, and all these categories of excise duties and attached taxes, they all have rates nationally defined. So all countries have different rates, and this rate changes most of the time every year. Annually, there is a new rate coming for each category. So let's see in France, for example, I just mentioned different rates that are currently applicable. So excise duties, you have different categories on the still wines, fermented beverages, sparkling wines, ciders, beers, hydromels, on special wines that are specifically defined. Intermediate products are also submitted to excise duties. There is a specific rate for beers as well. Small breweries have lower excise duties, just like anywhere in Europe. And in France, specifically for rum, you have a different rate if it comes from the French territory of other extra of abroad. And other alcohols that are all other alcohols not mentioned in the previous categories, they have a specific rate as well. As you can see, the rates are, as we said, we calculate the excise duties based on the quantity, but there are different ways of calculating. The first one is per hectoliter. Like you can see for still wines, it's a specific rate per hectoliter. For beers, it's based on hectoliter, but also on the degree of alcohol contained in the beverage. So there is an extra calculation. And on all other alcohols, there is a specific rate, but it's based again per hectoliter, but of pure alcohol. As you can see, other alcohols here in France, it's around 1,800 euros per hectoliter of pure alcohol. So there is an extra calculation to be made as well. Again, attached to these excise duties rates, you also have social security contribution. To make it briefly, all alcohols that are sold and that are higher than 18% alcohol, you have an extra rate to pay to the social security, and it's paid at the same time as excise duties, just as premix tax. Premix tax is a specific tax also in France for alcoholic beverages that are products that are mainly wine plus another non-alcoholic beverage, or for example whiskey and soda, or vodka and soda. So all the mixes have been extra taxed, mainly because they want to have the youngsters to not to consume them. That are the main rates applicable in France. If you have any questions, I also mentioned the articles in the French code, French legislation, if you want to retrieve them, then we can talk about it if you have any questions just after.
What is very, can you step back to the
Yes.
the previous slide, Fred? Because as you can see, the excise rates are very different from a product to another, but the rates are also very different from a country to another, and the excise duties is a perfect mean for every country to protect their own interests. Just to give you a very simple example, the excise duties that are due on still wine in France, which are 3.91 euros per hectoliter, is very, very low. There is even no excise duties in Spain or in Italy or even in Germany on still wine, because they just want to protect their own market. But the situation is very different in some other countries, and namely in northern countries or in the UK, where you may know that the excise duties can be 10, 20, 50 times higher than these rates. So it's very important to know that as a seller, if you are planning to sell alcoholic beverages in other EU countries, you will need to apply, you will be responsible for applying the right excise rate, which is not always easy to find, because if you're just selling beer, you know that your products are beer, but in some countries, beer can be split in different categories, and you will need to know into which category your beer will need to be listed, and to what kind of what rate will be applicable to your products. But it's even more complicated if you're selling very specific products that may be fermented, or that would contain some strong alcohol or spirits. It will make the situation very complicated, because you will need to classify your products and to determine what kind of excise rate will be applicable to your products. So most of the time, you will need to have a very, very deep analysis of your products in order to be sure that you are planning the right excise rate. Otherwise, the local customs authorities may be keen to reassess the excise duties that would be missing. And on top of this topic is an ever-changing topic. In France, for example, the excise rates are new every year. They are renewed every year. So you need to pay attention that, for example, on still wine, next year will probably be 3.94, 95, or even 4 euro per hectoliter. We still don't know about this, but you need to pay attention that your products need to be charged with the right and the current excise rate. Anything to add, Fred, about this?
No, you're complete.
Okay. So we've just talked about the applicable excise rates. Now it would be interesting to talk about how alcoholic products can be transported from an EU member state to another EU member state. We will not be covering real exports, i.e. goods that would be shipped from Belgium, for example, to the United States or to China. These operations qualify as exports, so there will be no question about if your products will need to be duty suspended or duty paid. But if you're supplying your goods from Belgium to other EU countries, you will need to determine whether your goods will be transported duty suspended or duty paid. So these are the two routes to have your goods transported from in the EU. The first and probably the best efficient way from a cash flow perspective is to have your goods transported duty suspended. Means that your goods do not attract any excise duties because you have the authorization to have your goods transported without payment of these duties. And this is only for operators that were granted some very formal authorization from their own customs authorities. And you will also need to make sure that the consignee, your client in the other countries of destination, also have such an accreditation from their own customs authorities. So the condition to have your goods transported duty suspended is that both the seller and the consignee were granted this authorization, and they all have an excise number that can be provided to the local customs authorities. And it's very important that you make sure that your clients really have this authorization. The other way to transport goods is to transport them on a duty paid basis. It's probably less efficient from a cash flow perspective because your goods will attract excise duties at every step on the commercial chain, but it's probably easier in terms of paperwork because since the excise duties are already paid when they are shipped from your country of establishment, then the customs authorities are not too much worried about who will pay the excise duties at the end of the day. They will know that the duties are already paid. So the paperwork is, of course, less demanding on this perspective. If your goods are transported on a duty suspended basis, it means that you will need to provide and to issue an electronic document called an EAD that will be issued electronically, and that will confirm and justify to each customs authorities in the country of the seller and in the country of the consignee that the excise duties are properly suspended. On a duty paid basis, you will need to issue a so-called DSA, which is a kind of accompanying document. Can be an invoice on a B2C basis, and we will see it a little bit later on. So the paperwork is a little bit less demanding, but it needs to be issued because in case your goods would be stopped or searched by the customs authorities, either in Belgium or in the country of destination or somewhere on the road, the driver will need to be able to justify that you issued such a document. I think that's it for this slide, Fred. So we've just talked about how to have your goods transported. Is it your slide, Fred, or is it mine?
It's yours. It's yours.
It's mine. Okay. So we've just talked about how to transport your goods from an excise perspective. Now we will provide you with some information about different authorizations that you can have as a seller or as a client in case you would be happy to improve a little bit your cash flow because, as mentioned, it's always easier and more efficient to work on a duty suspended basis, but you need to be authorized by your own customs authorities. So the first status is what we call the approved warehouse keeper, and that's probably the most extended status for a company, and this status would allow any company that would have such a certification to receive, to store, but also to ship goods that attract excise duties. It's probably the most extended one, but also the status that would probably be the most demanding in terms of accounting, in terms of control, in terms of security, because when the customs authorities allow your company to have such an extended status, they will need to be sure that you will be fully compliant and that, for example, you will commit yourself to declare on a weekly or on a monthly basis all the transactions that you had during the previous month. That means that any bottle of wine, of beer, of any alcoholic beverages are coming within your warehouse, they will need to be fully declared. You will need to have a full accounting of your storage. Your products will also need to be identified physically in your warehouse so that customs, in case they wanted to make some audits, they would be sure to retrieve all of your stocks that would be in your accounting. The situation would exactly be the same for goods that would be exported from or just taken out your warehouse, and you will need to commit yourself to declare any shipments from your warehouse to the customs authorities. Most of the time, the approved warehouse keepers are large or significant traders or producers of alcoholic beverages, as of course it needs to be very, very carefully managed. The other another very interesting status is the registered recipient. A registered recipient is a company that is able to receive goods on a duty suspended basis. We have, as a French and as a Belgian companies, such an accreditation with the French and the Belgian customs authorities. It is very interesting because you are allowed, having such an accreditation, you are allowed to receive goods duty suspended. You're not allowed to ship these goods duty suspended, but you can receive them duty suspended. So it's very helpful for our clients, for example, who are shipping goods from Belgium to France and who needs to have their goods shipped on a duty suspended basis. We can receive these goods, and you do not need to appoint or to find clients who have such an authorization. We can do this for you, and for this particular reason, this status is very interesting. The registered recipient on an occasional basis is actually the same as the registered recipient, but as it mentioned, it's just provided for occasional deliveries. The registered sender is made for companies that are producing alcoholic beverages, beers, wine, and who are keen to ship these products duty suspended to their clients who always have such an accreditation, who also have an excise number. And the last status is the one for companies that want to be appointed or acting as fiscal representative for excise duties purposes. We also have such an accreditation for clients, both in Belgium and both in France. And this status is very interesting because it allows our company to pay and to report transactions that attract excise duties. So our mission is to report and to pay any transactions of our clients, both in Belgium or in France, that attract excise duties, and we pay them directly to the local and competent customs authorities. So each status has its own purpose. It gives you different rights, but also different obligations, and you must be aware that the excise duties are always a very sensitive topic for the customs, much more sensitive than VAT actually. Next
and
slide,
this
please.
is why, yeah, this is also why we mentioned that all statues are actually quite difficult to obtain, but also requires guarantees. You have to make deposits at the customs to be able to use your registration when you have it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was a very, very fair remark, Fred, because according to the volumes of operations that you are reporting to your customs authorities, they could be much more demanding in terms of bank deposits, namely. And just for your information, in France, in order to be able to act as a fiscal representative for excise purposes, we were required to provide an unlimited bank guarantee to the customs authorities, and more demanding than this is actually not possible. So as mentioned, traders that want to report their transactions on a duty suspended basis need to have an excise number. So they need to require such a number from their own customs authorities in the member states, of course, where they are established. And the excise number, as you can see, can be split into different figures, and each figures or letter means something. As you can see, it's in our example, it's a French example. FR is for France, 0 is for the control, 06 is for the year of attribution of the excise number, the customs office is 615, the status is E, because in this example, the taxpayer can trade on a duty suspended basis, and the last figures is their identification number. So it's very interesting to go through this number, because it gives you a lot of indication about what a company that has such an excise number is based, what is their rights in terms of excise. Is this company allowed to trade on a duty suspended basis, on a duty paid? It's very interesting to have a look at this number. If your clients provide you with their own excise number, and I believe they do, otherwise you may be in trouble sending your goods duty suspended. But we just wanted to have a small focus on this number.
All these excise numbers can be checked on the government website. They all have a tool that where you can enter the excise number just to make sure it is a real one and it's not closed, it's still in use. And so to make sure that if you're trading with this, where your client reports this number, it's a real one and it is still in use. It's very important to make sure that the counterparty has the right number.
So the just a small slide on the EMCS system. EMCS that stands for Excise Movement and Control System. This system is fully harmonized between all the EU member states, and this system allows any company, any taxpayer who have an excise number to ship goods and to report their excise duties and their transactions, to report them in a computerized system. And this system will actually monitor all movements of goods circulating within the European Union. So it's working in each member states, but not only for alcoholic beverages, but also on other kinds of products. So the EMCS is an European tool, but each country, of course, otherwise it would have been too simple. Each country has the possibility to adapt its system to its country, and that is the case in France, where EMCS is not called EMCS. EMCS is called Gamma, and it's probably the cultural French difference. And this system allows any company to report electronically some transactions. In Belgium, the EMCS is called EMCS, and among other things, it allows you to issue accompanying document directly within the system. In France, it's possible as well. So it's as you can see, what makes this topic very difficult is that the basic rules are European and they arise from the relevant European directive. However, each country has the possibility to adapt the rates, the excise rates, the way they would like to have things reported, the obligations in terms of accounting, of security for goods that are being stored in warehouses, in bonded warehouses. So it's a topic that needs to be very, very carefully managed. The excise are always payable. That's not a big surprise either. However, it's important to know when the excise duties are payable. The basic rule is that excise duties are payable when they are released for consumption. That means that in case the products are transported duty paid or sold duty paid, well, that's not very complicated because the duties are already being paid. However, if they are transported duty suspended, they will be paid at the time they will be released for consumption. So the same goods can be sold from a company to another company how many times as you want, but at the end of the day, there will be a last client who will sell these goods to a private individual, who will decide to release the goods for consumption, and this will be at this particular time that the excise duties will need to be paid on time with the right excise rate to the right customs authority. I think I will pass on the floor, Fred.
Okay, thank you. So now that we know what is actually an excise duty, that we know that there are also other attached taxes. Let's see practically how it works. We see the two main important flows when we talk about distance selling. The first one will be to private individuals, and this comes duty paid. And when in the third part, we'll come to the flow when it's distance selling of alcoholic beverages to professionals, and this can be done duty suspended. So the first flow, let's see when we can talk about a distance selling as far as excise duties are concerned. The first criteria that is relevant is that it needs to be a B2C sale. The end customer is a private individual. Customer must be residing in Europe. This legislation only concerns European transaction, intra-European trade. Afterwards, it's export and it's other legislation. A sale is formalized by a distant communication technique. When we talk about distance selling, it means it's not a person that comes to your premises. It's actually a sale that is made at a distance. It can be through a catalog, through phone, through email, but mainly now when we talk about distance selling, we talk about web shops and a marketplace where you sell your bottles or any kind of alcoholic beverage through internet. Specific criteria for alcoholic products when it comes to distance selling. Transaction is done duty paid. It means that the goods are shipped but the excise duties are not suspended. You must pay in the country where it leaves. You need to first pay the excise duty in this country. Then it travels duty paid, and at the end of the day, we'll see that you can be reimbursed of the duty paid in the country from where it leaves. Another specific rule as far as alcoholic beverages are concerned is that direct deliveries are enabled. We can make direct deliveries, meaning that you can leave your storage in your country directly to an end customer, private person in another country of Europe. It's an extra agreement that we must have with the customs, but it's possible, and it's very specific to web shops, for example. Excise duties are due in the country of delivery. So as we said just before, as far as distance selling is concerned, it's the same rule. You pay the excise duties when it's released for consumption.
So if you allow me, Fred, to add something about this, it's that of course distance selling process is not very efficient. Again, from a cash flow perspective, because the excise duties will be first paid in the country of departure, even if they will be reimbursed later on, but they need to be paid, and they will be recharged. Not recharged, but they will be charged in the country of destination at the right rate, at the right local rate. So it would have been much easier to have your goods shipped on a duty suspended basis, but this is not compatible with the distance selling with to private individuals. So you will need to play this game in each country, having your goods first released for consumption in your country of departure and then charged at the right rate in the country of destination.
Exact. And practically, how it works, the flow is as follows, very practically. The French private individual places an order on the online platform of the Belgian seller. So the Belgian seller has a web shop, and the French customer comes on the platform through internet and buys a product. Prices that are requested to the customer to be paid includes VAT applicable in France, in the country of destination, and also it must include all excise duties, because as we said just before, it will be paid by the end customer, but it won't be paid to the customs by this person. It will be paid by yourself, so you have to include it to the price. The second step is that the Belgian seller will prepare the order and will release it to consumption in France. This means, as we said just before, if you release consumption, you have to pay the excise duties. So first step is you pay the excise duties in the country from where it leaves. You also have, as a producer or storer of these products, you have an accounting of all the products you have in your storage, and you have to take these products out of your stock and pay the excise duties, as we just said. The first step is that the Belgian seller will dispatch the goods. The order will leave from France, will leave from Belgium and go straight to the customer in Belgium. So that's the transport. So if you work in this frame where you have a tax representative, here namely ourselves, RM Boulanger, so we can handle the different administrative steps for you in the country of destination. This means every month you will have to send us an accounting of all the transactions, operations that have been done, all the products that have been sent. It's a very specific document that needs to be filled, and where you report the exact address where the product has been sent, the quantities, and the number of parcels that are concerned. I mean, there is a lot of information. It's very complete, and this is to be reported in France every month. So for the 5th day of the month, the tax representative needs to receive this list of operations that have been done. This will enable the tax representative to calculate the excise duties that are due in the country of destination. Just a small remark here. Again, it's a European law, but all countries make it its own way. And as you know, as Belgium, in Belgium, you have to report this every week. In France, they are it's a bit lighter, as you only have to report every month. So for the 10th day of the month, you have to report these operations. And that's the next step. The next step is that we take this list of operations, we calculate, depending on the kind of product, the quantities, the excise duties that are actually due, that we need to pay to the tax authorities for the seller. We ask the seller to pay us this amount, and we will pay. The next step would be that we will pay this amount to the customs authorities in France. Next step is that when it's paid, we receive a proof of deposit, a proof of payment. And with this proof of payment, the seller in Belgium can ask to be reimbursed of the excise duties that actually he had to pay when the products left the country. That's actually the flow when we talk about distance selling for B2C transactions through a web shop. Michael, I don't know if you have something to add.
No, it's perfect. Brilliant, Fred. Thank you very much. But it's just for the excise, because now it's time to
just
talk
the excise
about
duties.
VAT.
You go for a VAT.
So VAT is, the good news is that VAT is actually easier to manage than it was before the 1st of July. Because before the 1st of July, if your company was selling alcoholic beverages from Belgium or from France, here for the example is mentioned shipments from France, but it would be the same from Belgium. If shipments are made from Belgium to any other EU member states, your company was supposed to register for VAT in each country of destination from the first euro of sale. That means that if you had 15 different clients in 15 different countries, you needed to have 15 different VAT registrations and to file or to have filed the local VAT returns, and this was obviously not the best efficient system at all. From the 1st of July, things have changed in a good way, because you just need to remember that if goods are supplied from Belgium to any EU member state, you will need to charge the local VAT at the right VAT rate, at the right local VAT rate, but you will be able to report your transactions directly through the so-called OSS, the one-stop shop. It means that, and I think it's mentioned on the next slide, Fred, that means that the one-stop shop system will allow your company to report any VAT, any foreign VAT, to your preferred Belgian tax authorities. And that's, of course, it's a very, very big improvement, as it removes the obligation to register for VAT in each country of destination. So VAT can be dealt much easier as it used to be before the 1st of July of this year, thanks to these new changes. And basically, you will charge German, French, or Italian VAT to your clients. You will report it directly through the one-stop shop system, that is a web portal, fully accessible through your Belgian VAT return. And the Belgian tax authority's mission will be to dispatch the payments that were due to the German, the French, and the Italian tax authorities. The only thing to pay attention about is that you need to apply the right VAT rates. The luckily, when it comes to alcoholic beverages, there will be no reduced rates, so it will be pretty easy for you to know what VAT rate will be applicable. Make sure that you're not selling locally, because if you're selling from Belgium to Belgium, your sales will need to be declared through your regular VAT declarations and not via the OSS. And pay attention to the applicable excise rates in the country of destination, but also about some incompatibilities. And I will mention France now about this. France has decided that the OSS system is not compatible with selling goods, with selling alcoholic beverages. So that's a pity, because it's of course not in line with the EU regulations, but the French customs authorities will require you to have a SIRET number, which is again not in line with the European regulations. The only thing is that we need to deal with this requirement from the customs authorities. Otherwise, you will not be able to sell anything to France. France is not the only country that does not accept the use of the OSS system. Some other countries, namely in some northern countries or in some eastern countries, they refuse to use the use of the OSS system. They do not refuse this because they believe it's not reliable. They just refuse it because they haven't amended their own IT system, and that's the case in France. It means that the French customs is not able to receive and to monitor the payment of your VAT and your excise through the OSS, because they just cannot access it. So the only thing you can do if you're selling goods to France online is to appoint a fiscal agent. And the fiscal agent will register your company for VAT in France the old way. We were really hoping that this will change, because these regulations are quite recent. They've been applicable since the 1st of July. So hopefully the French customs will adapt their IT systems, and you will be able to report your transactions through the OSS. From a VAT perspective, it will be much easier for you, because if this happens, you would not be obliged to register for VAT anymore in France. I think that's it for Fred.
Okay, so let's see if we just talk about distance selling to individual, to private customers. Let's see what we can do if the customer, the client, is not an individual, he is a professional. If so, there is a way to work duty suspended, and this is the flow that I will just present now. What are the criteria to define that is a B2B distance selling? First of all, it must be a B2B. So in France, it's a company that sells to another company. And this flow that I will just present now means that the customer is a business that has no excise number. Because, of course, if he has an excise number, he can use the EMCS without the use of a representative.
But Fred, just a question: what kind of clients wouldn't have any excise number, for example?
For example, it can be a specific grocery, a restaurant, it can be any kind of business.
Wine shops.
That's wine shops. Some of them do not have any agreement with the customs, so they don't have an excise number, so they have to go through the system.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Customers, again, they must be established in Europe. Otherwise, it's called an export, and it's another flow that needs to be applied. Very specifically for this distance selling to customers that are businesses with no excess numbers, it can be done duty suspended, so the goods can move under suspension of duty. But since the recipient is not registered, an intermediary, a registered recipient, that can be us, needs to be appointed in the country of delivery. Meaning, if you're working from a business to business and the two actors do have an excise number, you can do it yourself through EMCS. Now, if the customer in front of you doesn't have any excise number, then you need to have an intermediary registered recipient. It can be us, so we can have the goods transported suspended in suspension of duty and report the payment later on. Again, through this process, direct deliveries are possible, so we need to mention it to the tax authorities, but it's an extra agreement that we have with them. But it can leave your storage in the country where it's stored at the beginning or produced, and go straight to the customer in France, being the grocery or the wine reseller in the country as destination. Let's see practically how it works. The French professional that has no excise number again places the order on to the Belgian seller. Again, that can be done through a platform or through any kind of distance selling way. Again, the prices include the excise duties and all attached tax due in France. The Belgian seller will prepare the order. Again, it's a bit like the order flow that we just seen, but the goods will also go out of the stock, but this will be reported in a specific column in what is called the accounting, the delivery accounting, the matters accounting. And in this column, you report that the bottles will leave the stock, but it does not mean the difference with the other flow is that it doesn't mean that it comes to consumption. It means that it just leaves the stock under suspension of excise. Now, this flow is a bit different from the other one because it comes to a professional. And before shipment, there is a list of registered customers. So you have to register your customer in France before shipping the goods. So you need to report them to us, to the registered recipient. We have to report it to the customs. They have to approve the customer. So they will mainly check that it doesn't have an excise number. And if it's so, if it's validated, then we can come to the next stage. So after validation, the Belgian seller sends the order directly to the French professional, and the seller will issue an EDA, so accompanying a document, electronic, in EMCS. So just like if he was using EMCS to another customer with an excise number. The difference is the good will be confirmed for reception, will be cleared in the EMCS system by the registered recipient, the intermediary, that is being us in this example, instead of the end customer. Here it's very short. We have only 5 days to do this. So within the 5 days or 4 days, you need to tell us, the seller needs to tell us the goods have left, they are arrived, and if so, we can clear the goods in the system and the procedure is over on this side. Next step, we will calculate the excises due. We'll call the funds to the seller, and the seller will pay RMB for the 5th day of the month. This being done for the 10th day of the month. So again, it's monthly reporting. For the 10th day of the month, we will go into the system. We saw that EMCS in France is called Gamma, so we have an access to Gamma, and we will report the quantities that left the country. We will recalculate with the system the amount of excise to be paid, and we will pay this electronically to the French authorities. This is the flow. Michael?
Thank you, Fred. And I think we are reaching the end of this presentation. We just would like to provide you with some of our conclusions and benefits about using a fiscal representative or a registered recipient in France or in some other countries. Can we go to the next slide, Fred? The first thing is that obviously by using a certified fiscal representative for excise purposes, you are able to use the approvals, the certifications that were granted to this professional. And as your fiscal representative, we will manage your excise duties, your excise duties compliance with the French and some other EU customs authorities. We will calculate and pay your excise duties. We will also maintain your delivery accounting, which is very, very sensitive topic. So we will be to be able at any time to provide the customs authorities with this accounting. And we will represent your company with the national customs and excise authorities. Next slide, Fred. The benefits about using a fiscal representation company is that you won't need to set up a permanent establishment in the destination where you are selling goods. That's probably the best argument for using such a system. Your operations will still be taxed for corporate tax in Belgium, your country of establishment, and there will be no need to register for VAT in destination countries, except France for the time being. Hopefully things will change. There will be no need for approval by the local customs authorities because we will be in charge of this. We will take care of your excise compliance and about possibly your VAT compliance. I think that's it for today. I think we're still on time.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. I received just one question. The question is, I am a small brewery in Brussels. I go to beer festival in France. I sell my product on local markets. The excise are already paid in Belgium. Do I also pay excises in France?
Fred, you take this one? You're muted.
Sorry. So yes, he has to pay the excise duties in the country of consumption. If it's released for consumption in France, you have to pay the French excise duties and be reimbursed of the Belgian ones.
And on top of this, you should charge French VAT as well, because your transactions qualify as domestic sales in France, so they attract the French VAT.
Thank you.
No, I think there are specific rules as far as fares are concerned.
Yes.
In some countries.
Yes, but you need to check them out for any EU countries, because every EU country has their own rules about this. But most of them will impose you to charge VAT from the first euro, actually.
Okay, thank you. Don't hesitate if you have other question to send by mail. Anyway, we are here to help you. So we are going to conclude, as I don't see any other question. So I remind you that the next and last export talk of the year will take place the 16th of December. The subject will be La certification d'origine. The webinar will be held in French this time. It will be organized with BESI, the Brussels Chamber of Commerce. I will send you the registration link as well. So thank you all for your participation, and thank you for your attention, and see you on December.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.